There he is. Uh-oh, he's frozen now. Listen, we have to keep this very, very short because the show got a late start and the band is taking a very short break, so we may not even be able to get through our entire interview. Let me quickly run down the set list. You heard Cassidy, Brown Eyed Dead, Tennessee Jed, that is, China Doll, Viola Lee Blues, and the music never stopped. And Gary will tell us what the pre-recorded interview is.
Yes, we're going to jump right to the interview because the band's taking a shorter than usual break because of delays at the start of the show. We also want to tell you that if you lost the feed, if you're watching live, Notes is going to repeat it with all the content because everything got recorded. It just didn't get streamed. So you can watch it. If you've already bought it, you can watch it again. If you haven't bought it, go to Doug's.net, buy it. We interviewed Hillary Gleason from a fantastic organization called Backline. We're going to go to that right now. We'll tell you more about their show on Tales from the Golden Road tomorrow. And we'll say goodnight now and go to the interview with Hillary.
Right on.
One of the things we most like doing here on Dead Air is calling your attention to organizations that are working to make our community a better place. And we're certainly going to be talking about one of them today. Joining us is the co-founder and executive director of Backline, which is an organization that provides access to mental health and wellness resources for music industry professionals. So please welcome our friend, Hillary Gleason. Hi, Hillary.
Hi, Gary. Thank you so much for having me today. David, nice to see you too.
Very nice to meet you, and thank you for doing this very important thing. Having worked in the music industry for decades, Gary and I are both very well aware of the mental health challenges that it presents.
Yes, indeed. And also the lack of resources that many people in the music industry often have to such resources. And that's the real important thing. And it's the service that Backline provides so crucially. Why don't you give us a little quick summary of the genesis of the organization, how you came to be involved, and exactly what Backline does?
Sure. Backline launched in October of 2019. I co-founded it with 8 other individuals from across the music industry and the mental health care space. All of us knew people that were struggling with mental health challenges. Many of us had struggled with them ourselves, and we became acutely aware of the lack of resources in the summer of 2019, following the loss of 2 of our community members and amazing musicians, Jeff Austin from the Yonder Mountain String Band and Neil Casal of Circles Around the Sun, and many other Grateful Dead adjacent projects. Amazing musicians with amazing talent that were unfortunately lost too soon. And many of us across the music industry were grieving those losses and also struggling to understand, how they had come to happen and what we could do to change the path moving forward. And I have a background in global health nonprofits. I have worked a lot internationally and was at Global Citizen for 4 years, which is an advocacy nonprofit, most famous for its Global Citizen Festival in Central Park. And so I have been working in the nonprofit space for a long time. And as we started to talk about, the better avenues that we could think of and imagine building for the music industry, it became clear that we needed to build these avenues ourselves. And so we started a series of conversations with folks from all different corners, agents, managers, touring artists, the folks who make sure that the music gets up on streaming platforms, every different piece of the industry to say, where do you go when you're struggling? What resources have you tapped into? What else do you think that should exist for us? And from that, Backline was born. We launched with a case management program, which is the first program of its kind that provides individual support in navigating the mental health care space. All of our case managers are licensed mental health providers that have an understanding of the music industry. And so anyone in the music industry or their families can come to us and say, I'm struggling to find a therapist that understands my lifestyle, or will work with my schedule on tour. And we have a clinical database of now nearly 550 providers across all 50 states that do understand the lifestyle and do want to support people in the music industry, making sure that they have all the tools that they need to continue to make music and be happy, healthy individuals. We've grown a lot since 2019. I mean, we launched just 6 months before the pandemic. And so all of the services that we provide became that much more critical in that moment when none of us knew when the next show was, the next paycheck. And so we've grown incredibly quickly, and I'm so proud of the ways that our community is showing up to use this resource and support this resource for other folks.
Yeah, I was going to say, I figured you would bring up the pandemic because it proved that the creation of Backline was prescient in a way that you almost couldn't have imagined. When the pandemic hit, so many people were not only deprived of their livelihood, but of really the thing that provided them with their social setting. And they were driven into isolation. So if people were prone toward depression or other mental health issues, it only exacerbated that. And David and I have worked in isolation for the last several years, and it's been a privilege and a pleasure to be able to do this live streaming. But I have to say, just recently, when I've gotten back into the world of live music in person, it reminded me of how much a component of my own mental health that has been since I was a kid. It provided so much of my social life and so much of my inspiration, and being deprived of that and being isolated, even to the more privileged extent that I was profound. So I know that for people who lost their jobs and or were laid off for indefinite periods or whatever, that had to have a terrible effect on their mental well-being.
Yeah, we internally at Backline talked about touch of gray a lot during those moments, because for us as an organization, we feel so grateful that we had already built the infrastructure to meet the need. I mean, our crystal ball was working really well to know, how important this was going to become. And so the organization really thrived in the beginning of the pandemic in a lot of ways, where more folks were using it. We got proof of concept, pretty quickly for an organization. We also lost all of our revenue streams. At that point, we were tied into bands and the music industry as one of the ways we were going to make money to support this nonprofit. And so when shows went away, we were, struggling to figure out where that fundraising revenue is going to come from. And the music community and fans really showed up for us in that moment. Many fans were giving us their monthly concert budget to make sure that the artists and the crew and everyone who is responsible for making the music happen had these resources so that they're going to be there on the other side of the pandemic, ready to make music again. And so all of a sudden, our grassroots fundraising just shot through the roof, and fans continue to give to us on a monthly basis, knowing how important this is to powering the live music industry. So it's been both like a beautiful thing, what happened during the pandemic, and it was also, of course, extremely challenging. And we try to see both sides of that, because that's really the human experience, right? And that's a lot of what we're trying to normalize at Backline, is that there are these high highs and low lows, and we want you to be able to make it through both of those and feel some sense of balance and normalcy in that.
Wonderful. That's great.
Yeah. And, people, I think, don't have a really accurate idea of what it's like to be a rank and file, work in the music business. I think the music business has enormous amounts of money around it, obviously, and people think it's all prosperity and success and limos and private jets and all that. But the average worker in the music industry often doesn't have access to insurance resources and health resources in general. There's a lot of financial challenge that goes into that work, and especially the people who are not out there on stage, people behind the scenes, are constantly diving for every crumb off the table. So something like Backline becomes even more essential to the workers like that.
Yeah, crew, are one of the most important parts of the music industry. And I think it's not shouted out enough, to say, hey, this show wouldn't be happening, this album wouldn't be made, all of these pieces that you don't see are really what brings it to you. And I first and foremost am a live music fan. And so powering, the people who allow me to have these magical, wonderful experiences that, like you said, Gary, sustain my mental health, and improve it is really, really critical. And I think, we're still one of the least insured industries. And unfortunately, I think crew people can feel that they're disposable within the sort of large organization. You're not the name that is taking the stage every night that people are coming to see. And so it can be harder in that position to express mental health challenges to the people that you work for, because there is fear that you will be seen as not strong enough to continue on the tour. And so a lot of what we're doing at Backline is giving you a place to have those conversations that doesn't jeopardize your job, right? You don't have to tell your employer that you're looking for a therapist or that you need money to pay for one. You can come to Backline and we'll figure that out with you so that you can continue to do the work that you love. And I think a lot of what we're still seeing in the industry is stigma. It's easier maybe for an artist to go on social media and say, I'm having a hard time, and they get all of the love in the world from their fans. But as a crew person or an assistant sitting in an office somewhere, you don't get that kind of like recognition and support. And so the stigma still exists in so many layers of the music industry. And we recognize that might not be something that we can tackle, or change fully. And so part of the important thing is just making sure that there are ways to get help without, falling prey to, I can't tell this person, or I'm still stigmatized within my own group.
So I have a couple questions for you. First of all, who is eligible for this and how do they get in touch? And secondly, how can people contribute, people like me who want to just help?
Yeah, so all of the information on us is on our website, www.backline.care. We're also on all social media at backline.care. And anyone in the music industry or their family members are eligible for our resources. Everything that we offer is free. If we are connecting you with a therapist or treatment that has a financial cost to it, we're going to discuss that with you, make sure that it's something that you can afford, and we understand what the financial, grants are that you might be eligible for. So all of the guesswork is taken out of it. But we intentionally launched with the largest eligibility of any organization serving the music industry, also recognizing the importance that families have in allowing the music to continue. Partners play an incredibly important role in this industry, and we want to be sure that they also have the resources that they need to navigate this lifestyle. So anyone who touches the music industry in any capacity and their family members are eligible. And in terms of supporting us, of course, financial support is wonderful. That can also happen on our website at www.backline.care. But we are also always adding to our clinical referral network. So if you know a therapist, psychiatrist, psychologist, anyone like that who might be interested in helping to serve the music industry, please send them our way. And just follow along. We are always growing into new programs, new areas. We have in-person events now in certain cities. So keep an eye out. There's a lot of ways that we are looking for support. And we want everyone to feel that they're involved in this really positive thing that we're doing.
Just sounds wonderful, and I really appreciate this so much.
Yeah. Is there a way for people who have friends with these issues who are afraid to address them? Does Backline have resources for families and friends to perhaps negotiate, the access to those resources. I say this because Neil Casal's passing had an enormous impact on so many of us. I didn't know Neil really well. I knew him a little and liked him so much. I know how loved he was, how respected he was, how much support he had from the community. And only people who were very close to him could see any signs whatsoever. I saw Neil the last day he played at Locken, and he was gone 2 days later. And I said, I couldn't have had any idea. But for the people who do have an inkling, are there ways to get through to their friends and say, look, you should not be stigmatized by this. Admitting to mental health problems is not a weakness. I think that's very common, not just in the music industry, but in society, that people think that something diminishes them if they admit to these issues.
Definitely. I think those conversations are still challenging in so many ways, depending on the situation. But one of the best things that you can do is open up that conversation, right? Oftentimes people just want to be seen and heard. Now that Backline exists, it's what we're hearing from folks in the music industry is that it's easier than ever to have these conversations because you don't have to have the full script to have the conversation. You can say, hey, have you checked out Backline? Here's the information, right? And sort of pointing them in the right direction. It also is designed to, take away the financial burden, the navigation of the health system, all of those things. I will say, if you have questions about how to, approach this with people in your life, there are a ton of great resources online. The National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, has a great resource for conversation starters. And of course, if you're talking about somebody in the music industry, you can always shoot us an email, hello@backline.care, or go through our case management process. And we can provide you with more tips, tools, and resources to have those conversations in a way that you feel confident.
That's great. Well, and I know you've also established some partnerships with people in the live music industry. I know Dayglow Productions is a partner of yours, Pete Shapiro's organization. So, if you are a worker in the business, you should know that you can connect with Backline and you'll have the support of the people who run the shows.
Yeah, Shapiro is a great call out here. I love to tell the story that when we were talking about Backline, we actually took a meeting in his office. We didn't have a name for the organization. We didn't know we were going to be a nonprofit, but he poked his head in and he said, hey, I heard what you're working on. Great job. How can I help? That's the perfect question, when somebody is building something like this, because there were so many ways that we needed his help. And he came back about 5 minutes later with a number for a check that he was going to write before we knew that we were going to build this. And like his support, I think a lot of that came from producing Lock-In and, the feeling that we all had leaving Lock-In and having lost Neil. But also from being in the industry for so long and recognizing what an important aspect mental health is to a thriving music industry. We've had a couple of amazing other supporters, go above and beyond. And I also want to shout out Goose, who has started to do $1 per ticket on all of their shows this year to support Backline. And we've built a new program where bands can actually give $1 per ticket and earmark some of those funds to pay for the mental health care costs for their band and crew. So kind of taking care of your nuclear family first and also supporting the health of everyone else in the industry. So we're very grateful for Goose. They're obviously on a huge run right now. So that's been incredibly supportive to us. I mean, Dead and Company has been so amazing. Activist has been a supporter since day one. You might see a picture of O'Teal in his Backline t-shirt sometimes. Like, people have really showed up for us and said, hey, this is something that needs to exist in the long term. And that belief has spurred us to do so much. So it's really a beautiful, beautiful community that we're building around something that used to be harder to talk about. And I think that's part of the fun in it too, is saying, hey, we're all human and we all struggle, but we can also be part of this positive momentum towards making sure that nobody struggles so far off the path.
That's really.
trains got to run today. Get a little time on the mountain, spend a little time on the hill. Heard some say better run away, others say you better stand still. I don't know, I've been told, well, it's hard to run. It's just as hard with the weight of lead. Just changing style. One step done and the other begun, and I wonder how many miles. Spend a little time on the mountain, spend a little time on the hill. Things went down, you don't understand. Well, I guess in time we will. the sun's so hot and the hour's so late. One way or another, one way or another, one way or another. When you can't overlook the blackjack of any other highway to ride, well, it's got no signs, only dividing lines, and very few rules to guide. Spend a little time on the mountain, spend a little time on the hill. I saw things getting out of hand. Well, I guess they always will. I don't know, but I've been told that a horse won't pull. You got to carry that load. I don't know whose back's that strong. Maybe find out before too long. One way or another, one way or another, one way or another. Well, this darkness got to give. One way or another, one way or another, one way or another. Well, this darkness got to give. One way or another, one way or another, well, this darkness got to give. One way or another, one way or another. Well, this darkness got to give. Well, this darkness got to give. Darkness got to give. Well, this darkness got to give. 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 landslide into ashes. Reason tatters, the forces tear loose from the axis. Clouds of delusion.